will be reporting on a study which investigates the relationship between trust, cohesion, and team performance. So first, one might assume that if we saw an increase in trust within a given sport team, we would see a subsequent increase in team performance. However, as the authors point out, previous studies which have investigated this particular relationship have actually found inconsistent results, and the authors question then, why? To more thoroughly investigate this particular relationship, the authors take several steps in their study. Number one, we see here that the authors, instead of just investigating maybe one relationship, the authors investigate three. More specifically, the relationship between athletes, between the athletes and the coach, and between the athletes and top management. Also, the authors point out that previous studies and other researchers have created many different definitions of trust. However, for the purpose of this particular study, the authors conceptualize trust as integrating psychological and group dynamic processes at both the micro level and the macro level, which is why the authors include the relationship between the athletes, as well as the relationship between the athletes and top management. Finally, here we see that the authors also look at this relationship between trust and team cohesion and point out the fact that previous studies have consistently found support for a positive, significant correlation between trust and team cohesion, which has subsequently led to the following three hypotheses. Number one, trusting in coach, in one's teammates, and in top management will lead to an increase in team cohesion, which will subsequently lead to an increase in team performance. So therefore, team cohesion is that mediating factor which influences the relationship between trust and performance. So how did the authors then go about testing these particular hypotheses? Well, as we see here in steps numbers 1 through 3, the authors created, tested, and administered a questionnaire to their sample of 690 professional Spanish athletes across 59 teams and 4 interactive sports. As we see here in step number 4, the authors also discussed and analyzed their proposed model with 14 experts, including coaches, athletes, and scholars. I want to jump back up here though for just a second and reflect on why it's important to understand that the authors only used interactive sports. Interactive sports are different than coactive sports. In interactive sports, the athlete's actions are interdependent. These would include sports such as basketball, soccer, football, etc. Coactive sports, on the other hand, are sports in which the athlete's actions are independent, in which the athlete's actions do not directly influence or impact those of their teammates. Such sports might include especially golf, as well as track and field and swimming. In coactive sports, some studies have shown that an increase in team cohesion actually has led to a decrease in team performance because having that sense of competition has actually increased team performance. So I recommend that we be careful about how we generalize the results of this particular study because the authors only looked at interactive sports. So what were the findings? As we see here on top, the authors found that multifoci trust variables in combination with team cohesion accounted for 71% of the overall variance in team performance. We also see here a slew of significant positive correlations. To start with, we see a correlation between team performance and team cohesion, trust in one's teammates, and trust in top management. We see a relationship between team cohesion and trust in one's coach and trust in one's teammates. A relationship between trust in top management and trust in teammates. And finally, a relationship between trusting in one's coach and trusting in one's teammates. So how else can we conceptualize these findings? Up top here, we see what the authors expected to find. The authors expected that trust in one's teammates, in one's coach, and in one's top management would lead to an increase in team cohesion, which would then lead to an increase in team performance. However, what the authors actually found, which is posted down here, is slightly different. We see trust in one's coach as relating to team cohesion, which in combination with trust in one's top management leads to trust in teammates, which subsequently results in an increase in team performance. So we see the same variables, however, in a slightly different pattern. What are some implications of this study? Well, number one, as consultants, I think that we really need to consider what is the root of this particular issue. Is it really that the athletes don't trust each other? Or could it be that there may be an unhelpful relationship or an untrusting relationship between the coach and the athlete? In addition, if the root of the issue doesn't just lie amongst the athletes, I suggest that we need to go beyond just doing team building activities and team discussions, especially if that isn't the root of the issue. And third, what can we realistically do as consultants? As we saw, this relationship between the athletes and coach and between the athletes and top management also significantly influences team performance. However, can we realistically impact these relationships? We may or may not be able to. So therefore, at times we may need to help the athletes make change, and at times we may need to help the athlete or team accept a given circumstance. And therefore, we need to have a variety of tools and techniques at our disposal to help assist that particular team. Because of these implications, I basically created a 5-step implications in action plan based on only the results of this particular study. Step number 1, identify what is the coach-athlete relationship and how much influence might we have over that relationship. If we may need to address the coach, we need to have built up that sense of trust and rapport with the coach because this can be a very sensitive issue. Number 2, how can we as consultants increase team cohesion, and what is team cohesion? According to the authors, team cohesion is defined as essentially a team of people working together to accomplish a unified team goal. As consultants, we could therefore lead sessions regarding how to create SMART goals and defining what is each athlete's role within the team to help accomplish that SMART team goal. Number 3, we need to at least identify what is the relationship between the athletes and top management, even if we can't impact that relationship. Number 4, now we can really start looking at what is the relationship between the athletes. Here is where we can implement those team building activities and team building discussions, etc. And finally, number 5, what is the impact on team performance as well as how effective have we been as consultants? And finally, one overall impression that I had about the study as a whole was that the author's conceptualization of the overall issue and topics, as well as their proposed model hypotheses, as well as their understanding of the findings and subsequent discussion, appeared to be highly grounded in previous research and empirical knowledge. Thank you.